First up is Gwendolyn, and yeah, I think this looks great. You've done a really good job. I like that in these views you've drawn it without hair, so you can really get the shape of the skull, but then you still have the hair drawing for reference. So that's good. Um, yeah, you've done a good job. It looks consistent front and side. The anatomy looks good. I like the extra detail of the hand. However, you'll want to model it with the fingers spread apart just slightly, just enough to, that there's a little gap between each finger, and probably the wrist going back a little bit more straight rather than at an angle like this. Um, but yeah, I mean, its toes aren't a big deal. I would tend to, you might want to simplify it just by, covering the foot so that you don't have to deal with the toes. It's just one more thing to trouble with. It's not that big of a deal, but yeah, I mean, if anything, I would say like a close-up of the face, so you could really explore those shapes a little bit. But yeah, just excellent work, and it would be good to see an update of the set as well, set design. This is Lyndon, and yeah, this is looking good. I like that there's some little details on the desk and stuff on the walls, and it's very neatly and carefully done. You've paid attention to perspective, which is nice to see. I like these little thoughtful, details with the cables here. Um, it doesn't tell a story, so that would be kind of taking it to the next level if it kind of like, the environment says something about the character in it. Right now it's fairly anonymous, and is this person neat? Is this person messy? Is this person successful? Are they unsuccessful? Are they happy in their job? Are they unhappy with their job? You could make some character decisions and then put some clues in the environment to, help describe those things if you want to take it to the next level. But it's a good design and should work well for modeling. Laptop. Some accessories, pretty straightforward. Looks good. And yeah, I think this is looking a little bit better. I think the proportions you have now will give you a little bit easier time to work with this. And it looks like there's a little bit more shape than you had last time. I think that's going to help. So yeah, it's looking good. I still think maybe maybe you want to do a little bit more on the face. The nose and the mouth are really sort of just suggested, so you might want to do a little bit more on that, and then maybe a drawing without the glasses, so you can really see the shape of the eyelids and like kind of the cheeks and any of those sort of things, just to get a better sense of the shape of the face. But yeah, this should work well. So nice work. This is Flora, and yeah, there's a few good additions. You mentioned going for a witch theme, and that's interesting. I'm glad that you've like sort of thought to populate this a little bit. You've got that book here. That's nice. Yeah, I mean, it was a really good drawing to start with, and I think your additional choices are good ones. So yeah, this will work really well. And remember, you don't need to model anything outside of the camera's views, so this should be pretty sufficient. And this looks good again. Not too sure what, if anything, changed from the last time, but it looks good. I think if you wanted to um, add a little bit more shoulder, that might be good. And maybe kind of get some reference for the side view of the shoe, because that shape's looking a little bit odd. But overall, this should work well. Yeah, back to that again. So, yeah, good work. I think anything else on this one? I actually think it's very good. Yeah, just the shoe kind of pops out to me, and as I mentioned. Maybe you want to do a view of the hand from above, or maybe get some photo reference for that. That could be helpful. You could try doing a three-quarter view of the face, just to get another reference of what it looks like. This is Jeffrey's design, and yeah, it definitely looks improved. The proportions, the arms just look they're so big to me. I mean, I guess it's obviously in a stylized design you can exaggerate whatever you want, but it just looks, I don't know, kind of odd having such a giant arm. It sort of looks like he could just bend. If he put his arms at his side, he'd be touching the floor. Um, it's a stylistic choice, but it just looks weird to me. So you can think about scaling that down a bit. And yeah, the face looks kind of interesting. Nose maybe a bit on the wide side, but I think that's all right. And I like the shape of the lips and stuff. Uh, Maybe eyes are maybe a bit far apart. Try scooting them in a little, see if you like that. But overall, I think you've done a good job on this. Looks nice. A lot of good detail. And again, yeah, this looks good. I think you might really like, how well you've done the perspective and everything. You might think about just some more details to flesh out the room. It looks pretty bare right now. I mean, I like the things that are in here, but and maybe that's the kind of look you're going for, is a fairly sparse room, which could be okay, but just something to kind of bring it to life a little bit more, give it some sort of personality or story to the space. And yeah, this all looks. I mean, some of these drawings are so simple it almost looks like you don't even need it. I mean, that sword is like, it's just like a rectangle and stuff. So I think that it's pretty straightforward. And also, don't forget you can use photo reference for objects too. It doesn't have to be all drawings. If that's helpful, it might give you some more ideas about detail and form. But yeah, good work on this. Okay, this is Idania, and I think it looks good. I would caution you that a skull, like a cow skull or dragon skull or whatever that is kind of a significant modeling project all by itself. Like most of these things, like beakers and shelves and tables, are pretty easy to model, but something like a skull, to do well, you could spend a really long time on. So I guess just something to think about, because it could suck away your time, and when you're gonna have a lot of work to do with the character and the set. So I don't know. Maybe if you traded it for other bones, that would be easier, and more doable in the time allotted. And I also think, think about, look around for other sort of details, like maybe there's power outlets, or maybe there's a window, or maybe there's some kind of vent, or a drain in the floor. Who knows? These kinds of things. Eye wash station in a laboratory. You might think of other things that make the environment not look so bare. Um, and yeah, the character's looking good. That's too close. Fit. I don't know. Fit doesn't really fit. Just trying to get a good size here. That's a little better. Yeah, I mean, that looks good. I think maybe some more attention to the foot, because the foot from the side, from the front, it's got this real kind of hump, sort of half sphere sort of look, and here it's got this pointy kind of look. So maybe think of getting it more consistent from the front and side. I get like something looks a little odd with the hip shape here and how the leg goes into the torso. Maybe look at some photo reference for that. Um, but overall, it's good. I mean, it has a real sense of anatomy, and it also has a cartoony look at the same time, which I think is a nice combination. His face looks a little more substantial and fleshy from the side than it does from the front, so this looks kind of more narrow, and this looks more kind of wide-jawed and just bigger features. So maybe try to get those consistent. And yeah, I think I would just stay away from a dragon skull. If you can get it done, you can get it done. I'm just concerned that to do that very well could take a really long time. So you might try, some other props, like again, other things you might see in a laboratory could be interesting. Okay, good work. Okay, this is Taylor, and yeah, this is looking pretty good. I think that the kind of short skirt is gonna limit her legs movement just because of the nature of a short skirt, but also if you move it a lot, it's not going to stretch well when you bind it, because we're not going to use cloth for this class, so or do any simulation, so it just depends on the way it's bound to the character. But that's okay. I think it'll be all right. But you might have to kind of design your animation accordingly. You might want to put something here that kind of indicates more of a knee. I feel like you kind of see where the thigh is coming down, and you do see the calf, but there's no definition of the knee, and I think that knee area could use a little bit of attention. Similarly, on the elbow of the arm, we kind of get somewhat like an amorphous forearm shape, just sort of mushing into the wrist and stuff. So some photo reference on that would be helpful. There's a website 3d.sk, which has a lot of things. And this hand looks, I mean, to me, the character looks very feminine, but the hand looks very masculine. So I might again look at some photo reference to get a hand rather than use that, because to me it completely looks like a man's hand. And then the face is okay. I'm a little concerned. It's very just sort of outlines of shapes, but doesn't necessarily describe a three-dimensional shape. It's more of a 2D design, and so I'm a little worried about that getting in your way, but it's good you have the side view. This one looks a little bit of a cleaner drawing as well. So, yeah, this is looking much better from this angle. Nice work on that. Yeah, and good environment here. I think it's pretty fleshed out with a lot of detail. You got some background thing, which could be interesting, of the city. Books, plants, shoes on the floor kind of helps tell who lives here, as does the comb, and I can't tell what that is, but yeah, it's good. It's got some character to it. It's a decent area to work within, so I think this will work well. You've limited the space well, so there's there's a fair amount of detail in there, but by limiting the space, you're limiting the amount of work you're going to ultimately have to do, which is a good thing. Yeah, pretty straightforward, but good props. This should work well. Okay, this is Josh, and it's looking pretty good. Might double check just put in some horizontal lines front and side. I mean, mostly it looks right. There was something about the shoe, the way that the feet aren't facing the camera and they're kind of pointed down, sort of throwing me off a bit, but you just might check on some points with a horizontal line to see that everything lines up front and side. I like the goggles and the helmet. I think that gives it a nice touch, sort of a pilot looking thing. I think that the shoulder shape definition is just this big rounded kind of piece of spaghetti thing, and you might want it a little separate and kind of more of a shoulder shape there. But yeah, overall that's looking good. Alright, yeah, and this doesn't change too much. It looks like you've added a few little things, so that's good, and yeah, maybe you changed a couple things. So yeah, I think it's looking pretty nice shape for you to have some kind of acting scene outside of it, and you've limited some of the space with that one, and I don't know, maybe you want to fill in with like, tall grass over behind here or something else to kind of finish off the background and make it so you don't have to model stuff way into the distance. So, good work on that. Next up is Gordon, and yeah, I think the concept is a fairly good one, but a lot of the design leaves a lot of question. How does this sort of hip armor interact with the torso? We can check the front view. Okay, that looks a little different from the side view. And I think, the face looks so cartoony, it doesn't look like something that'll help you as much as you'd like to kind of figure out the shapes of the face and stuff like that. So, anyway, with the armor stuff, just try to keep it all very simple. Don't go overboard with it. Just because it's going to be hard to build and hard to rig and then hard to move. So just keep it simple as much as possible. And yeah, I think so. I think some more detail on the face, and then yeah, this looks good. Nice perspective on that. Some more detail on the face. Maybe a couple sketches from different angles. Yeah, and just keep the armor real simple. Okay, this is Catherine, and yeah, the design looks good. I think you've done a nice job. Should work well. Nothing's jumping out at me as issue. I like the faces on the shape. It looks the facial features look a little squashed to me. Maybe, maybe they're all right. I don't know. I guess they're okay. Make sure they're matching front and side by putting in some horizontal lines. Like, does the top and bottom of the nose match the one here? Yeah, this could be good. You might want like a detailed hand from above to help you model drawing like that, or some photo reference, and maybe get the neck a little bit, maybe a little bit thinner, a little bit more parallel lines, because this big thing makes her look sort of like a little bit more like a bodybuilder. And I guess if that's your intention, that's okay. But otherwise, she doesn't really seem like that. So I might do a more slender neck. But yeah, this is good. And it doesn't look like this has changed. Again, fleshing it out, adding details and additional props, and they just have to look good enough to work in the background, so you can keep it pretty simple. But it just doesn't look like a real place that's lived in. It looks so like empty and perfect. So you might want to think about what you could add to it. And some simple, these are very simple to model. So yeah, those are simple stuff is good because you can add a lot of it easily. So you could, do one book and then duplicate it and scale it into multiple sizes, change the colors a little bit. And I guess the same could say of these cups. It's easy to make a lot of them once you've made one. This is Craig, and yeah, this is looking good. It should work well. It's got, it's a very stylized character. It's got a cool look to it. I like that you've added some definition at the knee and the elbows. I think that's going to help you out. Again, I might maybe flesh out the boot a little bit more so it's not just a tiny little thing coming to a point. But yeah, I think this is looking pretty good. You might want to do a little bit more on the, maybe do a sketch of the hand from above, because right now his fingers look very stubby, and while it goes with the style of the character, it could be really challenging to use the fingers and pose them or pick anything up, those kinds of things. So think about somewhat longer or narrower fingers and using some reference for that. It's all good. Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, when I look at that hand, I guess that's looks like a different hand from the one we saw. So maybe a little bit more of a distinction between the wrist and the forearm. Like maybe it comes in a little bit more. But yeah, that's good. I really like this sketch as well, and a nice detailed face. So yeah, that's all good. And then the cockpit. yeah, again, I think this looks pretty good. You might want to consider, again, a little more that's in here. What would the is there anything that the pilot would keep in there? Are there little vents or little like control panels or little tubes or wires or anything, whether it's inside of here or along the hallway, that can give it that sort of technological look? So it's something to consider. But either way, I think you've got some really nice shapes and design, so I think this could work well as it is. And finally, we've got the ray gun, and yeah, it's got a cool look to it. I like it. Um, yeah, that should work well. This is William Rizzo, and yeah, I mean, it's coming together. I think there's a lot of detail in this building here. It might be interesting to think about what else you might find in here, whether it's bits of trash left behind, or or whatever kinds of things you might see on the ground there, or maybe you just want to add things like detail, like cracked concrete or marble or something, walkway leading up to it. I like that sort of flag things hanging down. That'll give it a nice style. Stepping back though, the assignment is to have a design, not actually model the whole thing. We have time to model it later in the course, so I wouldn't put so much time into modeling it now, because it seems like maybe all this modeling has gotten in the way of doing things like figuring out the more minor details and also doing your character, which is sort of going to end up being the more pressing thing. So definitely get some character revisions in